Thank you all so much for coming. I'm Congressman Matt Gaetz. During my time in the Florida legislature, I was the principal architect of our state's medical marijuana laws, and I am here to confess that those laws need to change. And under the bold leadership of the DeSantis-Nunez administration, I am absolutely certain that they will. Specifically, I wrote into the law initially that smoking should not be a part of the medical marijuana program. Now, based on the information I've reviewed and based on the court rulings that have already been made, I'm not confident that that current provision of the law can pass constitutional muster. Moreover, there is extensive litigation right now about licenses for medical marijuana companies. Those lawsuits don't do anything to help patients or to give confidence to Floridians that we are running an effective medical marijuana program. So I'm incredibly excited that this afternoon, the governor of Florida is going to deliver a message, and he's also going to deliver a deadline. And I think that's going to ensure the people of Florida a safe, effective, and credible medical marijuana program. At this time, I'd like to invite to make a few comments my good friend who created a lot of the energy behind the cannabis reform movement in the state of Florida, John Morgan.
Welcome, Governor. I grew up here in Winter Park, so this is my home turf. Thank you for coming here. This has been my fight. People ask me, are you going to this press conference? I said, yes, I am. Since this governor was elected, I have been incredibly encouraged. I've been encouraged about his opinions about our environment and our water and his intelligence. He's not a dummy. You don't go to Harvard and Yale for no reason. He's read the constitutional amendment. He's listened to the will of the people, 71%. And the comments that he's made have been so encouraging to me that the people's will should be the most important. So we've had some private conversations before this, but I am proud to be here today, thankful to be here today, and grateful to be here today to our governor, Ron DeSantis.
Now we'll hear remarks from the Lieutenant Governor, Jeanette Nunez.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. Today is an exciting day. I want to thank the Congressman. Indeed, this is about the people. We want to make sure that this administration is listening to the will of the people and the voters of Florida that voted overwhelmingly for this provision. And so, as you've seen in our historic first week, this governor is not about words, he's about action. And he's about listening to people. So much so that as you saw him forth with Groveland 4, I think that was a tremendous testament to his vision and his insistence on listening to people and making sure that justice is carried out. He's also listened to the will of the people, such as the families of the Parkland tragedy, and making sure he took decisive action on that particular issue. And I know that today is an exciting day, and he's going to deliver a message to all Floridians. And I'm proud to stand alongside with the governor today, and I'm proud to be here as we listen to what Governor DeSantis has to say on this very important issue for all Floridians.
Governor.
Well, thank you all for coming. I want to thank John and Matt and Jeanette for being here. You know, when over 70% of Florida voters vote in favor of medical use of marijuana for people with really serious debilitating conditions, that is about as big a majority as you can get in this day and age. And it's my judgment that what the Florida legislature has done to implement the people's will has not done it in accordance with what the amendment envisioned. And I look at somebody who may have Lou Gehrig's disease or terminal cancer or multiple sclerosis. I think the Florida voters who voted for that wanted them to have access to medical marijuana under the supervision of a physician. Whether they have to smoke it or not, who am I to judge that? I want people to be able to have their suffering relieved. And so I don't think this law is up to snuff. We're currently in a number of cases. I want to use the fact that we are in this litigation as leverage to get better laws passed. So what I'm announcing today is the lawsuit that's challenging the smoking ban. We're going to be filing a stay of decision on that till mid-March, because after all, I served in the Congress. I want to have the elected representatives write the law in a way that the people intended. So we'll give them a couple weeks in session to address the smoking issue. And if they don't do it, we're going to dismiss the case and we're going to move on. I also reserve the right to resolve some of the other litigation that surrounds this issue. I mean, this thing passed over 2 years ago. You know, we need to have the people's will represented in good law that is doing what they intended. And I look at how some of this was created, where they created a cartel, essentially. I don't know that the amendment necessarily prohibits that, but that is not good policy. So I'd like them to address that as well. Both leaders of the legislature say they're going to do it, but you know, if they don't, you know, we have the ability to dismiss this lawsuit as the sword of Damocles hanging over their head. So this is all about doing the people's will. You know, we have these debates about these issues, but when they speak this overwhelmingly on a constitutional amendment, you know, it's our job to listen and to carry that out. So that's what I intend to do as governor. Happy to take any questions.
Governor, why is this one of the first things you wanted to tackle in your first couple of days?
Well, as you know, we've tackled an awful lot in just a short period of time, and I told people we were going to be very active on a number of fronts. We have been, but this is something that I was asked repeatedly in the campaign, because I think a lot of Floridians felt, hey, we voted for this, but it's not really been implemented the way we envisioned it. And I said, I didn't get into specifics because I knew there was a lot of moving parts. So I said, we are going to implement what the people wanted. I mean, that's our job when you get into these positions. And so it was something that I had promised during the campaign. We had to make sure that I had a good way forward in terms of you know, how it went. But this is, I think, what the people should have expected when they voted for me.
Governor, I've noticed there's no one here from legislative leadership. I can't see anyone. Obviously, Speaker Leva is not here, and President Galvano is not here either. Is there any fighting in between? I mean, is there going to be any tension there? I mean, are you confident that they'll be able to reach a deadline by March?
Well, I am somebody who respects the prerogative of the legislature. I don't want these things being dealt with judicially if we can help it. Certainly me unilaterally doing it, I don't think is the way this is supposed to work. So the way I'm doing this is respecting their prerogative. But we also have the fact that we have a constitutional amendment, and the legislature just can't decide not to implement it the way it was intended. So I hope by giving them this notice, by giving them a deadline, that they'll get the job done. There's a lot of moving parts with this, and there's different views amongst the Republicans in the House and the Democrats. So, you know, let's just see if we can get majorities behind doing what the people expected us to do.
Governor, you talked about cartels among the growers, I suppose you referred to. Are you looking forward to asking the legislature to open up a lot more licenses this year?
I think it should be horizontally integrated rather than vertically integrated. I mean, the way they did this vertical integration, that is not free market principles for sure. So I would rather it be opened up. You know, if you're going to do it according to sound economic principles.
Yeah. And I'll say I wrote the original vertical integration bill, and it is not worthy of continued defense. We wrote the legislation that way not because it was necessarily best for patients, but it's because that's how we had to do it to get the votes. And so I'm grateful that we've got leadership in the DeSantis-Nunez administration that really for the first time is going to put the patients and the will of the people first and not the politics of legislative manuevering.
So are you talking about the possibility of retail store operators being separate from the...
Well, again, I think the governor's point is that it is not for the administration to dictate those things. You know, that the legislature will go through that deliberative process, but the structure that I largely built is one that I can no longer defend, and I would call on those in the legislature to heed the governor's call and to really work on a system that puts patients first.
What about the lawsuit on MMTC licenses? Do you plan to, I mean, that obviously is fighting, that the cap is against the Constitution because it's inhibiting access. I mean, do you see that lawsuit also prevailing?
So that is a lawsuit that I reserve the right to handle in a different way. I think the legislature can address some of those issues, and that'd be something that I would ask them to do.
Governor, you're certainly winning a lot of praise from both Republicans and Democrats for some of the actions you're taking early here in your administration. But one point of criticism, when one of your first executive orders talk about workplace protections, it did not include members of the LGBTQ community. Is that something you would consider in the future, offering workplace protections for LGBTQ?
Well, on that, I think all we did was continue what had been in place before me. But I can tell you, you know, my workplace policy is really just one sentence. You will be hired based on merit. That's all I care about. And I think if you look at the appointments that I've made, you know, nobody has done more diverse appointments than I have. That's just, it's not even close. And so I believe in merit, and I don't care about those other things.
Governor, the Department of Health hasn't laid out, how the edible structure will look, despite that being under the law. How is that going to be addressed? We haven't been on that much.
Well, we're still looking at who we're going to appoint to be the head of the Department of Health, and this is obviously one of the issues that whoever takes that position is going to have to address. My thing is I don't know all the technical details about a lot of this. I read what I can, but I just where I have to hold the line is folks voted for something, and we need to deliver what they voted for. Well, I think we're going to see something by mid-March, because either the legislature will have reformed the law, written a new law, a law that's consistent with what the amendment calls for, or we're going to dismiss the lawsuit. Now, there may need to be some administrative guidance, but by and large, this is something that is going to come to a head relatively soon.
Governor, in your action, are you going to have the law the action is going to be to do with the restriction of the federal law?
So the issue with how the federal law, when I was in the Congress, I would always vote to let the states make these decisions that only impact Florida or whatever state. So whether that's medical or however they did it. Now, federal law, though, has not changed. We never really won those votes. So basically the Department of Justice said, look, we're not going to prosecute people who are doing medicinal marijuana. And then even in like Colorado, where they have recreational, the Justice Department hasn't done it. I would just say, we're better off, changing the law to reflect the practice than to have a law and then not. It doesn't really, because you're not going to enforce that law, but then you're going to enforce this. So I think Congress should address this. But I'm confident that given other states have gone down this road, anyone who's acting pursuant to the Florida Constitution is not going to be harmed by the Department of Justice.
Governor, there are 19 lawsuits dealing with medical marijuana. Are all of them on the table to be dropped?
I would say certainly the ones that have made the press, I reserve the right to dispose of those. I think that that's good incentive for the legislature to get this right. And, if they're not able to do it, then we'll have to try to bring this to a conclusion. Look, we've got a lot of fish to fry in Florida. The last thing I want to be doing is cleaning up for something that should have happened 2 years ago. This thing should have been implemented. We should have moved on. And I don't want to continue fighting some of these old battles.
What would you say to anybody who might be afraid that this could lead to, if they have critics out there, that this could lead to recreational laws like you see in Colorado? Because some people could be against it.
Well, I'm sensitive to that because that's not something that I've been supportive of. But read the amendment. It articulates debilitating conditions. If you have ALS and this is something that can relieve pain and a doctor says, that is what Floridians wanted. We don't want to see people suffering with these conditions. So it's very clear in that amendment what this is for. And, it doesn't mean different people have different views on the recreational, but you can be for recreational and for this, and you could be opposed to recreational and still be for this, because it is very clear that we're talking about people who are really in tough circumstances.
Do you plan to look at the case involving the patient growing his own medical marijuana?
We'll look at it. So basically, when I got in, I said, I know about the smoking case. I knew about, so I was like, give me everything. So on my desk, I have all the different ones. There's interesting, there's different federal constitutional challenges that have been made about the homegrown that haven't been successful, even though I would have voted in the minority with Gonzalez versus Raich. I thought the person in California doing that did not impact, I don't think, federal government, but yet the Supreme Court didn't do it. So we'll look at everything.
Governor, how much influence did Mr. Morgan and Representative Gaetz have in coming to this decision of yours? How much did you rely on kind of the outside experts, if you will?
Well, I think, Mr. Morgan was important because, he spearheaded a successful effort. And not that, if you passes with 60%, somehow you don't implement. Of course you do. But, that was a really major victory, and I think it was just so unambiguous that that there was no real justification to be dragging the heels. And then Congressman Gaetz and I have just, discussed, okay, he was at a lot of campaign events with me. This is something we wanted to do. We got to figure out the best way to do it. But it was something that we wanted to do pretty early on, just to let the folks know that I heard the folks during the campaign say that they didn't think the legislature did their full duty on this, and I agree, and we're going to move forward to rectify that.
In your inauguration, you said that you wanted to continue a lot of the things that Governor Scott has done, yet it seems like the first week and a half you've been in office, you've been correcting a lot of things that either he did or did not do. Is there a frustration there that you're having to kind of set some things straight to get your feet under you?
No, not. I mean, look, I think that we all come in under different circumstances, and Governor Scott came in when the economy was in the tank. He had run based on being a jobs guy, and he focused on that. I think did a good job with that. I'm coming in where, I could be in Fort Myers, I can be in Stewart. People are concerned about things like water, like they may not have been. I don't know that this was as salient 10, 15 years ago. Some of these other things like, the Groveland 4, the legislature led on that, and I came in as governor. I had a directive from them that was left over saying, consider this for a pardon. And so I did. I was like, these guys got railroaded. We got to do what's right. So, I'm just calling them as I've seen them. I think I want to continue a lot of the economic momentum that we've had. I think you'll see a lot of continuity there. But at the end of the day, I think Floridians expected me to be bold on our water quality and environment. And so that's exactly what I promised, and that's exactly what I'm doing.
Governor, the amendment gave specific instructions for DOA, for Department of Health to implement the law. Very specific instructions, but the legislature still decided to intervene with their own plan that obviously has been rife with lawsuits and whatnot. Do you feel that they should have stepped in, or do you see that maybe paring back their influence even more?
Well, I mean, I don't want to say there wasn't a role, because although it was there was a lot of things in the actual text of the amendment. There are all these different questions, and we want this to be safe for people. So there's different things you got to do. So I would like the legislature to have a role, and I think that they can have a role. Matt talked about him being involved, and how that approach was really born out of necessity. I think we're in a different spot than we were 2 years ago in terms of there's probably more public support, for getting this right than there even was then after the 72%.
Would you support recreational marijuana?
I don't. I mean, I think that, even in the amendment, it says that if a physician says someone with a debilitating condition that the marijuana use the benefits outweigh the negativity. I think most people realize there are negativity with it. And, my thing is I don't think it's good for teenagers and young people to be doing. I think if they stay away from it, they're better off. But, in this case, I just, someone that has these really tough conditions, man, I want to be able to do whatever we can to try to, provide relief for these folks. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.